Previously on Insights.
It was very hard because it was the pandemic, and then in June 2020, I received this diagnosis that changed my life forever, which was that I had aortic stenosis. The mechanical valve, it lasts 30, 40 years, it lasts longer. But the thing is that you have to take blood thinners for life. That me as a woman, I wouldn't be able to get pregnant, or that it would be very risky for either myself or the baby because of the blood thinners, right?
And this is something that is happening to you, and meanwhile, you had already been growing up with these ideas, these values that passed on from generation to generation, that this is the norm, the expectation.
Exactly. Yes, ways, and so, but I just knew that it wasn't my path, and even adoption, really, like, it's not, like, I don't want a kid, like, that's okay, like, I don't want, why would I want to be a mother who, like, what kind of life would a kid have if I become a mother not wanting to become one,
Your experience owning your story, would you say that pushing back against machismo has been a central part in all of this?
Definitely. As I was talking about the doctors, I mean, only 3 of them, because within cardiology, like, there's different specialties. So it's not like the same cardiologist did everything. I had a cardiologist, and I continue to have him. It's actually a team of a man and a woman who are doctors and take care of, like, let's say, the follow-up, like everything that it's after the surgery. But then I also had the surgeon who was a man. I had the doctors. There were 2 doctors for the echocardiograms. One was a man, another one was the woman. The woman was the one that did, like, the internal one. And then when I also went to cardiac rehab. So there it was a team of 4 women, but the cardiologist was a woman that her specialty is in cardiac rehabilitation. So it's like there's very specific functions. And what I'm trying to say with all of this is that every woman with whom I shared a story with, and that, like, was a doctor, they understood and they respected my decision. But every man, except for my surgeon, he was the only one, and that's also why I trusted him from the beginning. He was the only one to treat me with respect and say, definitely, the mechanical valve lasts longer. It is my responsibility to tell you about the pros and cons of each valve, but I agree with you, and I think if that's the choice that you made for yourself, that's the right choice. And with that, I was like, wow, like, this is the first man that treats me, like, like a person, because I think that's the thing. Like, again, it shouldn't be gendered biased. So anyway, the doctors, a lot of the opinions, they had, like, a second opinion and a third opinion and a fourth opinion to make sure that the diagnosis was correct. They were all men, and they were all saying the exact same thing. And it's, to your point, I think machismo, it's so ingrained in our culture as well. It really goes throughout so many things, like growing up, for example. And it's not, like, things have changed. My father has changed as well. But the reality is that when we were growing up, my mother would, like, serve him. It would be like, I remember clearly my mom, like, prepping and cooking, for hours and such. And for example, like, if he food, it was okay for him to say, I didn't like it, and not eating it, like, being disrespectful in this way. Again, he has changed, and it's not like, like, he's not like that anymore at all. But back then, because of machismo, the culture, it was the woman has to serve the man. And I remember my mother trying to instill this in me, like, you have to learn how to cook, you have to learn how to sew, you have to learn all of these domestic duties, because you have to do them for your husband. And I remember telling her, I'm going to get a husband who's going to do all of that for me.
Yeah, the feistiness, the defiance, I love it. Oh my gosh.
I was always
Maybe
like this. I was getting my
maybe
mom
everyone
into
should just
trouble.
learn how to cook and sew period regardless. Their basic life skills. Why not, you know? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in
Yes.
all honesty, I mean, I should have learned how to cook when I was little because, it was a tool that would have helped me when I moved by myself, I had to learn by
Mm,
myself how to cook and so. But but definitely like, doing the dishes and you name it, everything was a woman's duty. And for me, it was, I don't know, it's like that inner fire just like I was always like, no, like I'm not gonna put up with that, right? And but that's the reality that not only myself, but a lot of my friends and like pretty much everyone I know, I think from my generation grew up in a household where the roles were like that the woman had to serve the man. And if I go even further back, like my grandmother, kids, and like she had to do everything. Back then we didn't have like a lot of commodities, right? So she had to like go from like actually killing the chicken and like not only cooking but killing the chicken and doing everything by herself, and the man would be the provider and the one who worked outside and would just arrive from work and serve me and not do anything around the house, right? So certainly I think here in Guadalajara, in Mexico, the reality is that things have slowly begun to change, but there's still a lot to get done. Even now,
mhm.
like I can tell you right now, in and I'm not gonna be specific, I guess, just to protect interests, but I've had roles in the past where my male coworkers, we had the exact same job and they earned a lot more. And I found out through human resources that out, like it was a fact, like not something that I was thinking might be. No, it was a fact. It was in the payroll that they earned, and I'm talking 40% more, 50% more than what I earned for doing the exact same job. And it's like, it's crazy to me. And that wasn't that far along. Like I'm telling you, it was within the last 5 years that happened. So,
Oh my goodness. And we
Mhm,
need to go ahead and backpedal a little bit as well too, because when we're talking about machismo, I do want to set the record straight as well, and I'm sure you want to as well.
mhm.
We're not attacking any specific men in the sense of, oh, it's
No,
this man that's the problem, it's that
no.
man that's the problem. In many ways, Latino men are just as much being hurt by
Hmm.
machismo as
Exactly.
women and gender
Yes,
nonconforming works are.
definitely. Definitely.
There,
Hmm.
so, so for that record, to that be stated, when I hear a lot of what your story is, and it's a lot of the issues that you've been encountering, they are a lot of them, even though it has its own, shall I say, flavor, its own unique flavor,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
is an age-old story that goes across many different cultures
Hmm.
around the globe.
Hmm.
But
Hmm. Hmm.
one of the things I wanted to really get a sense about from you as well is because you learned about how this experience was impacting you individually.
Hmm.
What would you say were some life lessons that you learned from all of this?
So the first of all, I would say it's being true to yourself and staying true to yourself, like living authentically. I think, and I don't mean like it's hard because it ties back to what I was saying at the beginning, how we crave human connection, and of course we might care of what other people think. I totally understand that, but at the same time, it's so important to respect yourself enough to just be who you are, unapologetically you, And so for me, I think that was the biggest lesson because before having the diagnosis and everything, honestly, I wasn't living a life that was completely true to myself, like I was hiding this part of me. And I think once and again, like it actually led to a lot of changes in my life, including a divorce, and I know that people around me, loved ones, told me like, oh, but you're gonna lose everything. But it's it's one of those things where like I'd rather have a fulfilling life on my own, and just being who I am, because it's and I am sure that this will resonate across different topics, because it's not only about being child free, like it goes beyond that, right? Whatever it is that makes you happy and that makes you you, like it's so hard to cover it up, to say no, 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 I'm okay being this, like putting on a mask. And I think that was the biggest takeaway, that like I have to be unapologetically me to have a fulfilling life. And if that means not having a man by my side, like being a divorced woman, I'm fine with that, even though there's still like some social stigma around it. It's okay, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think that was definitely one of the biggest lessons. Mm, and then I guess another one is that it's so important to, like, even if it's one true friend that you have, like, friendship is so important. And I think that was another lesson for me. I think my friends, being surrounded by them, and, because again, it was during the pandemic that everything happened. And so everything was at a distance, right? Like they weren't able to physically be there at the hospital with me. But the day before the surgery, they sent me flowers, which I wasn't able to see afterwards. But they sent me this note where they told me that, and I get emotional every time I share that story. But they told me that I didn't have to be that strong, because they would be my strength, and that I didn't have to be anything but just me, because they would love me as I am. And so, like that really got me through everything that came afterwards, and continues to be, like, they're my pillars of strength for sure. And I think, as someone who had to struggle a lot with being someone else instead of who she was, like I said at the beginning, like, I was an introvert, and I was kind of forced to become an extrovert and do all of these things that I wasn't comfortable with. And and in some instances, yes, it helped me. It helped me develop a lot of skills that are helpful for my job, for example. But it wasn't who I was. And so, I think I was looking for acceptance outside, and I think once I learned that the acceptance had to come from within, that was a game changer. So that's, like, yeah, I think I went around a lot of things, but I hope I answered the question.
I want to put it out there too. I resonated so much with your journey, because speaking as someone who went through his own issues of being in relationships, of having fallouts from those relationships,
Mhm.
and putting so much value in what those mean, and the titles, what people, we don't even realize just how much power we're giving these
Yeah.
labels until
Mhm.
you don't have them anymore. And
Yes.
then you have to sit down with yourself and you have to say,
Mhm.
wow, who am I if I am not this anymore? Like,
Exactly.
I
Mhm.
really resonated with that so much with your experience coming out of this. And like you mentioned before, this didn't come without sacrifice.
Mhm.
Had to,
Mhm.
you had to end a relationship with someone
Mhm.
that I'm sure you loved.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And but the two of you weren't on compatible paths anymore. And,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
And it's okay. It's okay. Like, because I think, you know, he himself, he wanted to become a father, right? And so it's okay for him to have that. Like, that's perfectly fine. It's not like I didn't want to force him, like, you have to give that up to be with me. No, like, it's okay. It's okay if you go down that path. I'll be happy for you. Just as I hope you'll be happy for me for choosing myself and not having kids. So, yeah, yeah, exactly. I think some things definitely had to be sacrificed, but at the same time, I don't know, I feel so much like myself and so happy.
yeah,
Yes.
and you,
Mhm.
isn't that what this work is about? What
Yes.
you do, what I do, what
Hmm.
what we're I would hope what we're all trying to do is to make this
Yes.
world better. One of the things that I wanted to really pick your brain about as well all these experiences you went through, what advice would you give to a younger Anna?
Oof. I think it would be that you're enough. That no matter, what happens to you, what happens to around you, what others tell you that you should be, just trust yourself. You're enough as you are. You don't have to change for anyone, for anyone. That's the advice.
That's so true. That's the thing too. We are more than enough.
Yes.
You and I touched on this when you and I first spoke, but I mentioned before that I do consider myself a spiritual person. And I call myself spiritual not only because I do push back against a lot of the rigid institutional levels of religion, but also
Right.
because when you put so much emphasis on the category that you are, how much emphasis you put on your label. And don't get me wrong, we need to celebrate who we are. We got to celebrate all that. But when you put so much emphasis that you find your meaning only from those things, you only find your meaning from being a man or a woman or a gender nonconforming person. You only find your meaning in your nationality or whatever it is. Any like all those things could be like those understandings and those ways of being, like those ways of being don't go away. The categories and the labels and the titles can't be taken away from you though. It's about taking ownership of those. And I commend you for taking ownership of your journey. It speaks to not only a unique struggle for you, but I know it's going to resonate so well with so many other people out there. Like that courage, that bravery. I'm curious now because it's one thing to go through all of these things, but you didn't fold into them. When the decision came down to it, you chose to define yourself for yourself. Where do you think that courage came from?
Honestly, I think, I don't know. I feel like this connection to my grandmother on my mother's side, she was also super courageous. Like, if I had to define someone as brave, I think it would be her. She did so many things. My mother tells a story about how so my grandmother, she didn't know English. She was originally from Hermosillo, which is the capital of Sonora, which is a larger city than Ciudad Obregón and Baku. But her father had to move to because of work to Baku, which is, so imagine, just like context. She grew up with electricity and, like, commodities and such, and then she came to this very, very, very small town where they didn't have electricity and they didn't have commodities, like, and like, for her, like, she had to start working when she was like 14 years old, and then she got married when she was like 17, 18, something like that, like super, super young. And then, like, start to, like, build a life for herself and then for her 9 kids. And but she read a lot. She read a lot, and she taught, both, well, her children and then afterwards her grandchildren about what she read. And she taught me personally a lot of, like, about the world, in general. I think she really wanted to travel, and I feel sometimes that I would like to think that I honor herself, this way, like being me and just, being able to travel and such. But what I wanted to say is, she had this experience where she didn't know English, and I think one of my uncles got very sick, and she wasn't able to get treatment for him in Mexico. It had to be in the U.S. So she did what she had to do, and she got into the US, and she didn't even know how to communicate properly in English, but she found the words somehow to let them know that her son was in danger. And and my mom says that she even, like doctors in, in whatever Spanglish she was able to manage. And it's like that kind of thing, like, like looking back to it, like I feel like, oh my God, like she was fearless, like she didn't get intimidated by the fact that, like she didn't have the language or, like the skills. No, like she was like, no, 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 I have to save my kid, And so I don't know, like for me, I feel like she's definitely the example of courage that I had. And yeah, and I like to think that I'm, connected to her in some way, and that I kind of honor her journey with mine, So
I
mhm.
love that. And now we get to be inspired by your courage because she's passing that on to you. And
Mhm.
wherever she's at, I'm pretty sure she's proud of what you've accomplished and what you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Look, one last question before we wrap up. For people who would love to get in contact with you or work with you, or however they wish to make a meeting or anything happen with you, what do we have to do?
So you can definitely reach me at LinkedIn, just like you find me. I'm Ana Gonzalez. But you can also reach me on TikTok at Annie, that is ANNIE dot Stormborn, which is it's funny because it's both a reference to Daenerys, Stormborn, but it's also a reference to the fact that on July 26th of 1988, which is the year I was born, that day my mom says that it was super stormy, like it downpoured. And every year on July 26th, no matter if I have been in Ciudad Obregón or in Guadalajara, in my birthday, it always rains. So it's also a play on that. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right, Anna, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your amazing story. I appreciate it. It means the world. And thank you for doing this with me and inspiring us to not only look at the world differently, but to also embrace what makes us unique and to see how it can, even in its uniqueness, be reflected in who we are in terms of humanity. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the space to share my story. And to everyone out there, just believe that you are good enough. You are already enough just by being who you are. You don't need to have, a health situation to be, near death to actually be shaken enough to wake up, and realize that you're enough. You are already enough as you are.
You're enough. There you go. Someone make it a hashtag. You're enough.
Hello everyone, this is Justin Cobb, and that was Ana Gonzalez. Wasn't she amazing? Definitely go ahead and check her out because she is this phenomenal human being. I'll leave a link to her profile in the comments for you all to view, because why not? To you, my audiences, I am grateful as well, because it is through the support of viewers such as you that I am able to do this work. Be sure to like this video and to comment. Be sure to subscribe to Insights. Not only are we on YouTube, but you can find us on platforms such as Medium and Spotify. Be sure to check those out because you'll find exclusive content there that you won't find anywhere else. I will leave a link in the comments as well to those. Be sure to share Insights with your peers, your networks, your co-workers, your family members, friends, whoever. Go ahead and do that. Insight is here, and we are exploring the connections between the personal and the political on a global level. We are having these tough conversations with grace and nuance, and we're bringing the world together through the power of our stories. It's fantastic. I'm so proud of it. And I am so grateful to be making this content for you all. So definitely be sure to stay tuned for more insights. Until then, be well.